Hi, welcome to our channel. This is Photogenic, and this time we're going to talk about the difference between shooting in a RAW file format and shooting in JPEG. Now, when you shoot in a RAW file format, your camera records everything within your scene as information. So it will take in the highlight details, the shadow details, the saturation, how sharp everything is, and it will store it within a virtual cardboard box within your memory card, okay? This is just how I imagine it to help you kind of figure out what's going on. So when you've taken your shot and you're like, cool, right, I'm happy with this, I'm going to go and edit it, you can take that virtual cardboard box, pop it onto your computer, and you can say to your editing software, right, I want to change my shadow detail. And this is especially useful for landscapes when you've got a very bright sky and you need to bring some detail back in. The RAW files are excellent at giving you more detail in those areas where it might be too bright or too dark. And quite often, if you use Lightroom Classic, you can bring your highlight slider down and it will give you more detail in those sky areas. And the same is true if you have your shadow slider. So if you bring your shadow slider up, it will lift the shadow detail and you will see more in the shadow areas. So shooting in RAW is really, really useful when it comes to editing your photos because you can do these adjustments and they work really well. You can also adjust all your other things, so your contrast and your colors. And when you do these adjustments, it works really nicely. So if you were to adjust one thing, it's not going to then degrade another part of your photo. Whereas when you shoot in JPEG, if you then try to edit a JPEG photo, you're kind of gonna mess things up a little bit by doing too much editing. So for example, if you were to lift the shadows in a JPEG photo, you'll start to see noise or grain. So grain is film and noise is digital, but they're the same thing. And the quality in those shadow areas doesn't look great. If you try and bring the highlights down on a JPEG and it doesn't have any detail in those highlights areas, you just get this weird gray splodgy look. So if you are going to edit your photos, you need to be shooting in RAW. I recommend using the largest RAW file format that your camera can record. Okay, there's no point in having a fancy camera if all you're going to do is shoot in a small JPEG file format because you're not getting the best from your camera. Now, once you have taken your RAW file, you can take that, pop it onto the computer, do all of the edits that you want to do. When you are happy with your edits, you then flatten your picture into a file format. So before this, it was a data file. Now we've done our edits, we're going to flatten it into an image file. And you can choose at this point which file format you would like to use. Now, the most popular is a JPEG, and most modern day cameras now will print A0 with a decent sized JPEG, and you'll have plenty of detail in your print if you're going to print it big. Now, if you are planning on doing a billboard size photo, you may want to choose a TIFF file format because this will retain more information within your file and allow you to produce bigger prints. If all you plan to do is use your photos online, you would use a small JPEG. So my process when I am editing my photos, and this is all set up in Lightroom as presets, and I can show you how to do that on the session if you want to, is I will save everything sized for print and for web. Now, I just use JPEGs. I don't use TIFF because I'm not printing for billboards unless it's a particular customer that does need that. But the majority of the time, I don't. So I'll just use JPEGs and I'll have a full-size JPEG, so I don't resize at all. I'll just save straight to JPEG. And then I will also have a web-size JPEG, and that's the one that I'll use to upload to the website or email to people. And if I'm taking these for clients, I will use both of the folders and I will send both of the folders to customers because it's really useful as a customer to be able to have the two different file sizes and I name them appropriately so they know that's the print version of this file, that's the web version of this file. Okay. So when we shoot in JPEG, what happens? Why would we shoot in JPEG over shooting in RAW? So when we shoot in JPEG, our camera takes in all the highlight detail or the shadow detail or the clarity or the saturation, and then it processes it into the image file in the camera, flattens it down into a JPEG, and that's what you've got. Okay, it does the editing for you. And it processes it in a fairly basic way. So it adds a bit of contrast, adds a bit of sharpness, a bit of saturation. Okay, it just makes it a bit punchier than it would if it were just the raw file. So actually, straight out of camera, you might look at your picture and go, well, actually, I prefer a JPEG over a raw file, but you don't have as much control to edit. And in some scenarios, that JPEG is going to have lost detail in bright highlights or in dark shadows. Whereas the raw file, you would be able to bring that detail back, because even though it might be too bright or too dark when you just look at it on the back of the camera, when you get it onto the computer, you can tweak those sliders in Lightroom Classic and you'll get that detail back. Now, a RAW file is about 4 times the size of a JPEG, so you are going to need bigger storage to store your pictures. This is this is an ongoing thing anyway, because as our cameras get better, our file sizes get bigger. So this doesn't, once you kind of get your head around the idea that your raw files are bigger, you just live with it. You just get on with it. Okay, so you may have a few external hard drives that you save your pictures to, and you might use cloud storage. I would recommend having both, so that, you know, if the worst comes to the worst and your house burns down and you lose all your hard drives, then everything's backed up on the cloud. So when would you use JPEG? So some photographers, especially sports and events photographers, would shoot in JPEG because it is a quicker way to work. They can take that JPEG from the camera straight to a printer, print it out there and then, and produce prints on location. They don't have to worry about the middle step of editing everything and making it look better and it taking a while to load in because raw files are bigger. They can very quickly turn around a print at an event to then sell. Okay, if you do work in this way as a photographer, your shooting technique has to be excellent. So you have to know how to use your camera to get the best results, because there's no editing. It goes straight from the camera to the printer, boom, it's out. Okay, especially if there's only 1 or 2 of you. If you've got a team, you might be able to do a quick edit, and you can still edit a JPEG. So if there's, like, I don't know, you photograph a kid on a horse and they've got a spot on their face, you could probably edit that out quickly and then print that out. They're more likely to buy it. But generally speaking, if you're trying to be quick, you're just going to get through the process quickly, get that photo printed, and so you can make that sale. So there are some situations where a JPEG is more appropriate, but it still comes down to your personal preference. There might be some photographers who say, okay, well, I'm going to do this event, but actually I'm not going to release the photos until the next day, and then I'll sell them online rather than selling them there and then at the show. It just depends on your business model and how you prefer to work. So in summary, you should shoot in RAW if you were going to edit your photos. If you want the best from your camera and you want your photography to be as good as it can be, shooting in RAW is the way forward. And shoot in the largest possible RAW file format that your camera can do. If you are not yet able to edit your photos, you don't have access to a computer, you don't really want to learn how to do a new thing, and you're just happy with shooting away with what you've got, shoot in JPEG. You don't need to use a RAW file. It's completely up to you how you work. Just do what makes you happy. I really hope this has been helpful for you. Please like and subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends, all the things that people ask you to do on YouTube, and I will see you soon.